All right, everyone, welcome to the Real Estate Game Changer Show. I'm your host, Mike McKay, based in the Jacksonville, Florida market. If anyone is in the Jacksonville, Florida market or looking to get into it and has questions, feel free to reach out to us for any help. And we are a very active buyer here in the Jacksonville market. So if you have any deals, feel free to send them over as well. Each and every week, we do this show with people who are changing the game of real estate all over the country. And this is a live show, so if you do have any questions, please put them in the comments for our guests to answer. This week on the show, we have a good friend of mine, Angad Guglane, who does a lot of business up in the New Jersey area. Angad, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Mike. And apologies to everyone. I guess I'm a bit late, but I'll take the full blame for that.
Cool, man. Well, to kick it off very briefly, let's just talk about how you first got started in the real estate business.
Yeah, so I started out in college. I was living in New York, going to school at NYU, and through happenstance, learned about the opportunity in rental brokerage in New York City. Very glamorous industry, for anyone wondering. But no, it was a good way to make some money. So basically, the plan to start was to rent apartments to college students because I was going to school and all my friends needed apartments. I did the math, and each commission was a few $1,000s. And I was like, wow, that only takes an hour, a couple hours, and that was a crazy hourly rate for like a 19-year-old. Um, at first, I really had no business, and then I learned, okay, if I can market myself to students and market myself to the school, and started doing social media advertising way back, it kind of took off, and I was able to start earning about six figures a summer when I was 18, 19 years old. I think 19 is when I first did that. And so by the time I was, my third year of college, I had a couple $100,000 saved up, and that was my initial nest egg to start buying properties.
Gotcha. And from there, what was your first deal?
Yeah, so a buddy of mine from school was from Philly, and he told me about this beautiful place called Camden. Camden, now it is a beautiful place, but at the time, if you Google Camden, you read headlines about being the most dangerous city in America, one of the poorest cities in America, and all these negative headlines. And I guess for fair reason, it was a pretty tough place. About 20 years ago. Since then, the government's put about $3 billion cumulatively through tax credits and direct investment to revitalize the city, similar to what they did in Jersey City and Newark and other places. So, kind of saw that writing on the wall and was able to get in when prices were close to what I think is kind of the bottom. But the initial plan was I was buying properties for 25, 30, $40,000, renting them for $1,300 a month. It seemed too good to be true almost. They were like 20 caps. So that was a start, and bought the first five properties in cash, and then finally set up the banking relationships so I could do my first little commercial mortgage refi. Did the refi, got all that equity back, basically almost more than I put in the first BRRR, and then that was off to the races. And the first year about one, second year about five, then about 30, then 100, and just kept going from there.
Cool. Well, talk a little bit about those commercial mortgages, right? Because this is quite a while back. A lot of people now kind of use these DSCR lenders that are around, but you've kind of, if I remember right, you went the route of building these local banking relationships. So, do you want to talk a little bit about how
Yeah,
you did that and why?
yeah. So primarily use community banks, local banks, and why? I don't know. It almost predates the rise of the DSCR lenders. I think those guys got super active post 2019. I started really in 2017 was when I got like really in the business. So maybe I started those relationships, kept those relationships, and their pricing is always better than the DSCR guys. What I also really like about the community banks is your servicing is pretty clean. The DSCR guys always use national servicers, and it's a disaster. Like even now, I'm getting like I have one loan with a DSCR lender. I can't pay it off because it's a 4.3%. But but I get all this random crap in the mail, like you're like they claimed eight of the 10 properties are in a flood zone. It's just not true. They have to prove that they're not in a flood zone. They put forced place insurance all the time. Like servicing is a nightmare, and you have to call the servicer who has like doesn't have any like you have no relationship manager or anything. You're dealing with a call center. Um, so I really prefer community banks for that reason.
Yeah. And how have you gone about building those community banking relationships over the years?
No, it's definitely a good question. It's not easy. It's like you can kind of cold call or just get your foot in the door by emailing them or whatever, and that works. Depends on the market. It's just being in the market, knowing people. Funny enough, I got very lucky through golf. One of my someone I met at my course was like a very old, not very old, but very like established individual in the community knows like everyone in the banking sector. He's on
Mm.
the board of the banking commerce or chamber in the area. Knows everyone, and he was able to write off 7 or 8 intro emails, and I just got that many more banking relationships. So it's all about like being in the area, knowing these people, getting referrals. Because before meeting him, I'd went to a few of these banks and they'd said no. And this is
Mm.
being 5 years in, owning hundreds. I had probably 150 doors at the time, and I was still getting told no. So like it really is about having the right intro.
So you had even gone to some of these same banks that he introduced you to, and they said no until he made that introduction?
He did, yeah.
Wow.
He
Okay.
it's about knowing the right people at the right at that bank.
Yeah. Oh, because you weren't necessarily speaking with the right person when you reached out initially, possibly.
Correct. I mean, you can get an intro to some guy who's like originates a couple $1 million a year in mortgages, but he's at the beck and call of like the whatever chief lending officer who then reports to the board of the bank or whatever. If you get an intro to someone in the board level, like it's gonna be a lot different relationship than if you got an intro to someone on the origination side. And this is also primarily because I'm putting forth product that these banks they don't love these scattered site single family, or scattered site even like small multi deals. They want down the middle multifamily, or I guess
Mm.
office used to be really attractive, but I guess now it isn't. But yeah.
Yeah. Gotcha. And what
But when I
is,
was starting out, everyone's like, "Oh, bring me office. Why do you bring me this residential crap? Get me an office deal." That's what it was like.
yeah. And then are these loans structured differently than your typical DSCR lender loans?
I mean, not really. I know some of the DSCR guys do like the 30-year fixed. You're not going to get that with these community banks. I mean, generally, like the term doesn't matter because you're going to refi the thing in 5 years, anyways. But let's say it'll be 10-year term, 5-year term, 25-year term. It's not important. The M is usually a bit tighter. It's like usually 20, 25 years. Sometimes you get 30. I mean, DSCR has the pencil. They want 1.2. LTVs are anywhere between 70 and last about a year and a half ago, I got 80%, which is pretty good, pretty great. But I don't know if that'll
Yeah,
come back. Um,
sure.
but yeah, they're just very they match the DSCR guys quite quite
Cool.
similarly.
And for the newer people listening who might not know what DSCR is, can you explain that briefly?
Yeah, DSCR is debt service coverage ratio. That it's a formula basically looking at your net operating income over top of your debt service. So let's say the property brings in $1,000 net, and your mortgage is 800. That's roughly what, like a 1.25, something like
Mhm.
that. Maybe my math's wrong. Um, but yeah, that's the DSCR. And when we say DSCR lenders, there's a lot of these lenders have come up over the years where they will originate loans and they will sell them off into mortgage-backed securities.
Yep, gotcha. And as far as building that portfolio over time, you had some pretty interesting acquisition strategies. Do you want to talk a little bit about those?
Yeah, of course. So it was it's funny. I was talk about this frequently. It's like in this business, you always have to change. It's kind of the part that frustrates me about it a lot is you have to reinvent yourself based on the market.
Mhm.
So when I started, it was like throwing darts. Like I could literally be on a phone on auction.com, on Hubzu, on Hudson Marshall. There's like all these auction websites. And that was it. I was literally placing bids on auction websites. No one else knew how those things worked or was comfortable using them. And I was buying these houses ridiculously cheap. And I had a cool little niche where like I didn't care if I bought the thing sight unseen. I mean, I could do a drive by, right? I wasn't even local in the area at the time. I had people do drive bys, but like I didn't care if I could get in because if I bought it cheap enough, even if the inside was totally wrecked, it was still a decent deal. While a lot of the other investors in the area, I was like, I never use these auction websites. I can't do an inspection. You're crazy. I'm like, okay, but if you're buying it for like 20 grand and like the cheapest thing on the MLS is 40, like how bad can it be?
Yeah.
And that was the business. It was just like super high cash flow. Construction costs were considerably lower. So I probably got the first 70, 80 units just doing that. And then, burring them out, whatever. Then I got introduced to people in the tax lien industry. My market being lower income, there's tax liens are actually like a problem, like where people don't pay their property taxes, they lose the properties. These tax lien buyers, they have an interesting REO process there. It's like much more informal. Like REOs with like traditional banks are not interesting because like
Yeah.
they have to follow a process. They all get listed on MLS. It's like a fairly competitive process. But these tax lien
Can you explain what
REOs,
REO is, just so people don't know, because some newer people on the show?
yeah, REO real estate owned. That's like basically real estate that is owned by some sort of institution or company or even individual as a result of a foreclosure action. So, what's interesting about that is the person or company or institution, whatever, they're not in the business of property ownership. They're in the business of debt investing or debt origination or tax lien purchasing. So
Mhm.
their core business is to multiply their capital through like paper money, buying paper versus they don't want to deal with toilets or tenants or inspections or roofs. so so whenever they have to do that, they want to get rid of these things.
Got it. So you explain how that maybe like these tax lien things work, because it's different in different states, right? I mean, Florida operates totally differently, for example,
Yeah,
than
every almost
New
all
Jersey.
50 states have their own process. But tax lien is basically every municipality in the country auctions off their delinquent tax liabilities. Some states it's different, but long story short, the government doesn't want that liability on their books. They need the money to pay for schools and whatever else they do with property tax revenue. So they sell that delinquency on to private individuals or companies or investors, what have you. Those people they have a statutory defined timeline. New Jersey, it's 2 years. Where after that, after which point they can start foreclosing the debt. Um, don't think it's a get rich quick scheme, guys. It's really not. Like only a very, very, very small percentage, significantly under 1% of these actually foreclose. You guessed
Mm.
it. The ones that foreclose are probably like the worst ones of the pile. Like sometimes people lose money on the foreclosures, honestly, where
Mm.
a couple of years of property taxes are worth less because it could be there's a reason the person isn't paying the property taxes. The property is probably decrepit in some way, or it could be like an environmental issue. Like there's a myriad of reasons. But there are some needles in the haystack, right? Especially in areas that have higher delinquency rates and stuff like that. So, built a business around that. But again, it's quite fickle. And even that opportunity is closed up, right? Like these tax lien funds now are pretty tight with their REOs because as the market has gotten more competitive, it's very institutional. Like these tax lien companies are pretty big now. They all bid against each other. So they know that the REO is very important. They need to maximize every penny of that to help their returns. Um, so now that's not even that interesting anymore.
So previously, if you could just walk back a little bit, so these tax lien companies, what they'd buy a lot of tax liens, and then you somehow met these guys and would buy them not through a standard MLS REO process. You would buy them one to one almost, or how did that all work?
Correct. Yeah, like they wanted simplicity, right? They don't have an REO department. They just want to get rid of these damn things. So like I would package off. like 5, 10, 15 of them in a package and buy them up like that. Similar to like how the SFR fund started, like they would buy these packages from traditional banks.
Mm.
Um, I guess it was kind of a delayed process, but yeah, same idea.
And you were buying they had already foreclosed at that point, or no? You had to do it yourself.
Uh, they'd already foreclosed, correct? Yes.
Got it. So you were buying the property. So how did you make sure you didn't get the environmental issues and the
Well, that's where
decrepit
your
property?
diligence comes up, right? I mean, and sometimes you have to take it. Like if the guy's like, you have to take my whole package, and one of them is a doozy, then you got to figure out what to do. You, you'll take the 10 and list three of the worst of the 10, and hopefully someone pass that property on to someone else. I mean, granted, environmental we never had. And that's something I would advise. I'm not a lawyer or accountant or whatever disclosure you have to say, but the environmental is pretty dangerous. I mean, I've heard stories of people going bankrupt because the whatever environmental protection agency of your state can hold you personally liable to fix that damage. So definitely stay away from that. But thankfully, it's not an issue for most of your single family residential properties. Like it's mostly like commercial warehouse stuff that has
Yeah.
environmental issues.
What was your diligence looking like on those when you'd buy those packages? How would you do that?
And you just drive by, you try to get in and see what's going on. I mean, no, nothing super formal, but yeah,
Yeah.
just as you do with any other SFR deal.
Oh, so you were buying that way for, and how many
Hmm.
properties did you buy using that kind of process?
Probably 50, 60, 70, somewhere in that ballpark. And that's a frustrating thing about this business. You always have to reinvent it, right? Like first was the auction site, and the tax lien articles myself, where we're buying the liens directly from the municipalities. And that worked. And that's been pretty fruitful. And now I'm mostly going after commercial stuff and mixed use because no one wants it. So
Huh.
like my strategy's always been like I always try to find value in the market and look where people aren't looking, and kind of I'm seeing that in the office and commercial and the mixed use space right now.
Interesting. So you, after these, just to go back a little bit, after these tax lien funds kind of weren't fruitful, you started buying the tax liens directly and then doing the foreclosures yourself?
Correct, and you can't even do that really because it's so competitive to buy these liens from the primary market. But this
Mm.
again was a needle in a haystack. Like the area that we invest in, Camden, for some odd reason, had thousands of these tax liens on their books over the last 30 years they didn't sell. So they had those in their back catalog, and I was able to buy some of those inexpensively. Now, obviously, those have all been picked through, so that avenue's closed up.
So when, and now you're looking at some more commercial stuff. So is it mostly office, or what is your target here?
um, I wish I had a very a fancy investment thesis for you, but I don't. I mean, my thesis is this: it's like most people are too afraid to buy it. I'm buying at like an eighth of what it costs to build. So if something costs $200 a foot to put up, I'll pay like $30 a foot or $40 a foot. So maybe a seventh or whatever. So
Yeah.
you have no worry of new supply coming in the way you do with residential now, right? And my thesis is just you got to be aggressive about leasing, right? Like, yeah, we have a huge vacancy rate. Like, there's too much office available. There's too much commercial retail available. But guess what? How many of those people are aggressive in putting them on LoopNet and putting up signs and answering the call whenever it comes in and leasing it? People aren't that aggressive on it. So if you can buy commercial and you can really be aggressive with leasing, do it yourself. I mean, brokers are great, but a lot of times, like the stuff that you want to buy might not be the sexy Class A stuff that brokers like to work on. So if you can put in the elbow grease yourself on the leasing side, that's good. And I prefer that. And I really am sick of residential. I'm not sick of residential because I think the cash flow is great. The demand is great. It's just the construction. It's such a waste of time. Like you have to like the stuff that's available now for a deal is heavy capex, And capex, you have to in Jersey, they kill you with all these permits and inspections, and these contractors are super annoying. I've tried like 3 or 4 different iterations of construction, and there's really no money in it for me, at least. I just don't have the patience for it. So I'd rather buy quality product on the commercial side or the office side, where you're doing literally paint and carpets and maybe putting in bathrooms and kitchens, and doing that construction is easy and no permits required, very simple. And you can use quality people to do it and pay them fairly. It's good. um, and you're spending your time and your effort as an investor on the leasing and the marketing front, and
Hmm.
structuring the deal, which is where you should be making your money. Like, I didn't get in this business to be a contractor.
Hmm.
I can't do it. I'm not good at it. I mean, other people have, and they probably make a lot more money than I do, but I just don't have that skill set. So
Yeah.
I give up.
I mean, you did a couple hundred before you gave up, so it's not so bad.
Yeah, I'm saying that as today. Today's a Friday, and Friday our contractors get paid on Friday, and I have some guy cursing me out right now on the other line. So,
Yeah.
and granted, he's 2 months behind in the job, so there you have it. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm just sick of it. I don't have the patience for it.
Yeah. Gotcha. Um, I mean, let's talk a little bit. I think it's a good thing to talk about a little bit. Like, it's always a curiosity thing with people. Which route should I go? I mean, you've had construction in house, you've outsourced to GCs, you've tried all the different ways. I mean, it seems like you're not a fan of any of them because it's just not your thing. But like, if you like,
I
what
am
are
a fan of this. I am a fan of the paint kitchens and bathrooms, because that is, and I don't want to paint all these contractors in bad light. I respect a lot of them, and it's a very tough business on their side. They have a way tougher business than we do. So hats off to them, and they're doing actual hard work. But sometimes what you put them through in a full gut of like 150-year-old house is pretty freaking hard. So, like, I don't blame them for being difficult on to work with, right? But doing paint and patch in kitchens and baths is very simple. Like, you or I could do that. It's not hard. You literally just, you know, paint and putting in down LVT flooring and installing a new kitchen cabinets. It's not hard to do. And you have no permits required. And that's what people pay for anyways. Like, do people care that you rip the property down to the studs? Had to wait weeks to get a fire blocking inspection, then an insulation inspection, and then put all new sheetrock, and then get another set of inspections for the rough plumbing, rough plumbing, rough electrical before. But do they care that you went through 8 or 10 different inspections and had a 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 month construction process? They don't care. They want a new kitchen, a new bathroom, new flooring, new paint, everything behind the walls. They don't care. So why are you going to subject yourself to the pain of doing all of that?
yeah. And in the beginning, was the stuff you were buying not as big of renovations because there wasn't competition? So you just bought stuff that didn't need all of those things. It wasn't 150 years old.
Well, yes, I was buying better quality product because there wasn't as much competition. Exactly. Um, Additionally, the town Camden, it was just easier to do business in. They were a lot less stringent on inspections. Um, as things have improved and there's been more investment activity, they've gotten a lot more stringent on inspections. So there's that, and for good reason. I'm sure it's good for the city, but it makes it tough.
Yeah.
And now, our average, when I started, rehab used to cost 35 grand all in labor and materials. Now you're like 75,000 bucks, 80,000 bucks. Um, why? It's just the labor has gone up a lot, materials have gone up a lot, and with more inspections, the hold costs go up, and it's just a lot more expensive.
Yeah. So with the shift to commercial, what's your acquisition strategy now?
Oh, it's brilliant, man. It's pretty simple. There's not a lot of competition. You can buy on market stuff. There's
Really?
no secret sauce. Yeah, it's like when I started. It's fun. Literally simple. You just go on. One of my favorite things. Here's a golden nugget. You look for commercial stuff listed on MLS. Why? Because resi realtors don't want to deal with commercial. You look for resi stuff listed on LoopNet because commercial guys don't want to deal with residential. So you kind of index arbitrage, if you will, right? Um, or exchange arbitrage, like the people do with stocks and bonds and stuff.
Yeah.
So try that.
So that's your acquisition strategy. Just go on, just offer on it, and that's it.
Yeah, it's like, would you buy a 100% vacant office building? I don't think you would.
Well, how much?
Well, I just bought one for 40 bucks a foot. I'll sell it to you for 50 bucks a foot. You want it? It's
Yeah.
beautiful. It's actually a beautiful building. It has an elevator in it. It's in the center of town. It's great.
And are these still in Camden or are these different areas?
Different areas.
And what are you looking for in those buildings? What type of asset?
Uh, Really, it comes down to construction quality and your capex. As long as there's no capex required, you're fine because you just know that whatever you're buying for today, let's say I'm buying for 40 bucks a foot, 50 bucks a foot, 60 a foot, who cares? My basis is less than anyone in that asset since like the 90s. So like, because my cost basis is so low, I can afford to take a lower lease rate than almost any other product in the market. I mean,
Mm,
granted, there are people that own these buildings in cash, and they could beat you on price, right? Because if you have debt on your building, you have to maintain a certain rent. That these guys could go like they could go really low. But all that to say, you could be the low cost provider
mhm.
if your basis is so low.
And then, so you're trying to acquire those. Is there like a minimum square footage you're looking for, or you just don't care as long as the deal makes sense?
I don't care. I mean, I bought like a 1,200 square foot building this week, and a couple weeks ago, I bought a 12,000 square foot building. I haven't bought two like huge buildings. I guess the bigger stuff. I'm not that much of a fan of. 'Cause your expense ratios get kind of high. You get these like glass buildings that were built in the 80s that are like kind of inefficient to run and difficult to subdivide. But I'd be lying if I told you I knew that unequivocally. I'm just kind of like generalizing here. I know the office building that our office is in, which is like a class A minus building. Like the expense ratio is ridiculous. It's super expensive to run that building because
Hmm.
it's a higher end building. So like you have to like the HVAC costs are crazy. The uh, they have like all these grounds that need to be maintained and grass cutting and flowers and like all this random crap that you in these three elevator banks. Like I don't know, all this stuff just seems expensive to run, right? I like to buy the simple, 2 3 story building, built pre-war, or maybe built before the 70s and 80s, before these class structures came up, and they're kind of efficient and easy to run and cheap.
Got it. So then you buy those, you do that very basic capex, and then talk about the aggressive leasing. Like what's some strategies that you're doing around that?
Yeah. I've only been down this road a couple times, so I can't say I'm an expert, but from what I've learned, signage is huge. Like signage is freaking huge. Like get
Hmm.
big, bright colored signs for lease and pick up that number, or make sure someone in your office picks up that number. That's huge. LoopNet, just put it on LoopNet, put it on MLS. It's quite simple. Like you just literally got to market it the way you would market anything else. And you want to go get bonus points, go do some cold calling. It's the old school like New York City leasing broker techniques. It's like, if you bought an office building, you look at the 10 office buildings within a couple mile radius. You get the tenant list and you start soliciting them and say, hey, you're paying 14 bucks a foot. I'll lease you $12 a foot and give you the first 6 months free. Like, I haven't done that yet, but in my head, I wish I did do that. But yeah, it's something you should do.
Yeah. Okay. And what, your competition is just lazy, or that it's like
Of
what's
course, it's
the
real estate. Everyone's lazy.
yeah. Okay. And then what about debt on these buildings? What are you doing for acquisition debt and refinancing?
Term, term debt, same community banks, acquisition debt, like just private lenders, like people that I have relationships with. There are debt funds, but yeah, that is definitely. If you want to talk about the downside, it's way harder to get acquisition debt for
Hmm.
than your standard resi stuff.
So how you've got some private lenders. How have you gone about building that private lender base?
Just over the years, like relationships that I've had. I went to business school at Penn. So meet some good people through that. People that I've done deals with in the market that have retired and have like cash. And they're like, I'd rather just be a paper investor, invest in debt rather than deal with tenants and toilets and roofs and inspections and all the fun stuff we deal with. So if you build a handful of those relationships, um, and you treat their money like it's your equity, like like as of late, I've had thankfully been able to refi a bit. So, and I have a bunch of money just sitting in a high interest business savings account, right? But yet, every deal I do, or most deals I do, I'll still try to pull money from my lenders to make sure their money's working. And I'll let my money sit in an account earning 4%. And I'll pay them 11, 12%. Sounds kind of dumb, right? But guess what? I'm keeping that relationship alive. So their money isn't sitting idle, and they're experiencing a return.
Got it. So you're always trying to put their capital to work so that they stay invested with you and don't take that capital somewhere else.
Correct. Exactly. Exactly. And then the capital that I have, I can obviously use as equity in new deals when we find them. So it's not all for loss, but it is like it is. These are relationships. Like you can't be one and done, right? You borrow some money from someone, you pay it back a year later, and then 2 years down the road, you want to borrow that same money. That person probably didn't keep that money waiting for you. They probably did something else with it. So if you want to keep them happy, you have to keep putting that money to work again and again and again.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense. Um, and then, so let's talk about property management because you used to outsource property management on the residential side, and then you went through this huge change where you brought that all in house.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a lot of iterations of the property management function as well. And that I'll chalk up to it's a very difficult thing to manage scattered site Class C properties. It's not, or Class D plus, whatever you want to call them. It's not for the faint of heart, right? I truly believe that you cannot do it third party. Why? Because if you
Mm,
want to do it right, it's almost impossible for it to be profitable for a third party without them charging you like 14%. And because of market forces, they can't do that. So they're going to give you a product that's inferior. Um, and they're not bad people. They're trying their best, but like if they're going to charge you 8% and half a month commission to lease up a property, there's just not enough money in it for them to do what it takes to do it right. Right? Like for example, for our leases, I mean, some properties are very easy to lease and you can lease it well. But if you want to hit your credit standards, which we have really high credit standards for our market, like we want 675 credit score, which is really tough to get
mm,
in a Class C market.
yeah,
To do that, the property might have to be shown like 10 times or 12 times. If you're paying them a half month commission, how does that make sense? Like how are they going to do that? They're not able to. So they might show it once or twice and take a 550 credit score. Now that 550 credit score, I know this from experience, that person ends up being a bad tenant, you have to evict them, that's a $20,000 hit, $25,000 hit. That's a really, really expensive proposition. Versus if you did it right and showed the requisite 10 times or 12 times or 15 times that it needs to be shown to get that quality applicant, you'll have a cash flowing property.
yeah,
But what property manager can say, oh, we charge a 2 month lease up commission? No one's going to use them. But
yeah,
honestly, I do it in house, and it cost like sometimes a lease could cost $2,000 if I add up the number of hours, um, and I'm paying W-2 salaries, paying above market, and when you add all of that up and your expenses, just your general admin and office expenses, you gross it up, it could cost you $2,000 per lease.
yeah,
But guess what? It's worth every penny.
yeah. So talk about that because I think when you and I have talked before, you send someone to show it every time, which in certain states that's not normal. Like in Florida, everything is self-show, but I think there's certainly advantages to the way that you do it. So you share why you do it that way?
Yeah, I mean, our market, like I said, Class C market, working class, or like not even working class, just tough market, right? So like, the thought of giving someone keys to a property, I know they can have credit or like credit cards or whatever backing it. I mean, someone could just squat in there, and in Jersey's like a pretty horrid state for landlord tenant laws on the landlord side. Really, really difficult to get your property back. So that cost is quite prohibitive, or the risk of that happening is quite prohibitive. So you got to show it yourself. I mean, we do open house style where we'll show as many people at a certain like after work time. On a tough to lease property, I have a property manager and an assistant property manager, and I've told them like, sorry guys, you gotta, if it's a tough to lease one, it's been on our books a while, you got to go show every single car that comes in, guest car that comes in. If they want to see
Hmm.
it at 2 o'clock, you'll show it to at 2. And if someone comes in at 4:45, we got to show it at 4:45 because like it just has to be done.
Yeah.
Customer service based leasing.
Yeah. But I think, like, do you feel that having someone actually show it outside of obviously avoiding squatters in New Jersey with those laws, like, do you feel having someone actually shows it gives you an advantage over people doing self showings?
Yeah, I mean that's one thing I do feel good about. I think we really do have a very aggressive leasing process, and I don't think the other local people in our market in the Class C product type are as aggressive on leasing.
Yep.
So I think that's like your highest. If you look at where your highest ROI dollars are spent, leasing, marketing, paint, kitchen, bathrooms. Like that's how you make money. A lot of other dollars that are spent in real estate, you don't get much of a return for. But
Yeah.
this is the money to spend.
Yeah. And why do you feel that having someone there is advantageous from a leasing perspective besides the
It's like
squatters?
anything, right? Like why are there so many car salesmen or car saleswomen who like why are there so many like any high dollar item like there is people still, you need not you don't need, but like it helps to have an in-person sales process.
Yeah. And then are you asking people doing some screening there though to make sure that if you're not interested in leasing to people with a 550 credit score, do you try to screen that ahead of time?
Yeah, we do. Here's another good one. I got like an iPhone for my AP assistant property manager who's kind of like the first point of contact. Like we use Appfolio and their inbuilt text conversation feature sends through like a Phoenix, Arizona area code as a text, and it has like the stop to unsubscribe thing, so that your hit rates are quite low. But after getting her an iPhone and a Mac, so she could just text on the computer, we're able to get a lot higher hit rate from tenants as far as figuring out pre-qualifying them and screening them and getting them to showings.
Interesting. So people weren't responding because it looks kind of spammy with that stop to unsubscribe thing at the bottom.
Correct, and the emails, like a lot of people don't even check their emails. They use to sign up for these property, guest cards. People don't pick up the phone, so like the best that took a few iterations too. It took about 2 weeks to figure that out. The iPhone and the iMessage is gold. Like people
Yeah.
say, like text. Those marketing guys will tell you like text hit at like the text open rate is like 80% or whatever, or 60%, whatever it is, and the emails are like 5% or 10%. iMessage is like 100%, or
Yeah.
maybe not, but it's close.
Pretty close. Cool. So let's walk through that process, right? Because I think it's interesting for people who, you do it a little different. So someone inquires on a property and you want to screen them
Uh huh.
before you bring them out. What does that process look like as soon as that lead comes in?
Yeah. So we'll send them like a can, like we'll have a copy and paste, like, hi, thank you for interest in the showing at 123 Main Street. Just so you know, our qualifications of property are one, credit score over 675, two, income over $6,600 a month, and three, no prior evictions. Text sent. Then does this work for you, or would you like to see it this week? Text text sent. And then if they hit you back, and most of them that meet the qualifications will, because why not? Appfolio, this is where Appfolio comes in. They have a pretty cool feature where like they have this like a showing interface. You send them a link to the showing. They can pick a time.
Mm,
Um, yeah.
like a
So
Calendly type
that's
thing.
the yeah, exactly. So that's the leasing flow. Text is great. Again, they can call that number. But you know, this is what I mean why leasing is super expensive. Like that's probably 50, 60% of what the assistant property manager does,
Mm,
right? Like I had to hire a person just to answer leasing messages. And I know there's AI and all these solutions for it. Haven't integrated any of those, and haven't maybe that'll like be an unlock at some point. But yeah, it's definitely a lot of work.
Yeah, got it. So what else changed like when you brought property management in-house versus using a provider?
Yeah, I maintenance is just done better, right? We have three maintenance techs on salary.
Hmm,
You have a lot more cost controls on that. Your collections are higher because you're placing better tenants and you're following up with people that aren't paying. You just have a control over the process, right? Like at the end of the day, like what control do you have if it's a third party company? Okay, you're gonna fire your third party property management vendor. Let's say you have 200 doors. You know how arduous it is to replace that vendor with someone else, and who's to say
yeah,
that new vendor doesn't do that issue or whatever you're having again? Who's to say? Right? So you're going to be agonizing over this, right? Versus if you in-house PM and you have three or four employees that are doing everything that that property management company would do, and one person isn't carrying their weight, you can, you know, put them on a performance improvement program and mentor them, figure out what's wrong with that individual, and if it's truly they're not working, then you can replace that one individual, and you still you have a lot greater control over the process.
yeah. Are you guys looking at any KPIs when it comes to leasing?
It's a great question. I wish, but no. Nothing like at the end of the day, like if it's something gets leased and like our good stuff, like the stuff that has really high demand, where it's located in an area where people want to live in and it's renovated, like that leases itself. It leases like we've had same day leasing. Like we
Got
listed
it.
on Tuesday, it's leased by Wednesday. It's crazy because there's still that supply demand imbalance, right? Now the stuff that's difficult to lease, that's a head scratcher, is the stuff where um, it could be brand new and you're trying to break like a rent comp. Um, and I'm doing that right now with a building, and we're doing that just because like it's a brand new building, got renovated 6 units, and you want to get the rent super high because you're going for refi. So that's a bit more aggressive on the leasing side there, or properties that could be renovated. They could be good properties, but in bad locations, where if you have a super high credit standard, it takes a lot of leasing to get someone with a good credit score that wants to live in that area.
Got it. Got it. Cool. Well, let's talk a little bit about um, this idea. I like what you kind of said. It's like real estate in terms of the acquisition side, you're kind of always having to kind of reinvent yourself because things change, right? First, you're on the auction websites, no one's bidding, so it's awesome, right? And then people start to figure that out. So then you move on to the next thing, right? So for you, like,
And I'll
how do you,
preface that with like that is because I'm kind of an independent solo sponsor. I mean, 7 person company now, but like it's I don't have investors, so it's my money entirely. Or I have like debt investors, no equity investors. So versus like a lot like most other real estate operators you have, they're using some sort of outside equity. So their business is they have a strategy and they raise their equity based on that strategy, and they can collect fees off that equity throughout the length of the investment. So they might not have to pivot as much, right? Because they're trying to hit a return for their investor based on a specific strategy the investor agreed to. When it's your own money, you can pivot on a dime. If you think
Mhm,
one asset class or type of deal is getting too competitive, too expensive, too low returns for your threshold, then you move on. And I obviously have a higher return threshold than if I'm using other people's money, because if you're using other people's money, you're collecting a management fee, you're collecting acquisition fee, disposition fee, whatever. If it's your own money, it's all about gross dollars. Like
yeah,
how much money can you make? What is your IRR on that? So that leads, I guess, my thesis to always be evolving based on the market.
yeah. How do you know it's time to move on from one thing to another? Is it gut feel or is it just you have something specific you look at?
I mean, you start. It's tough to put a to quantify it, right? Because I still do SFR rental deals, or sorry, SFR like BRRR deals. So I haven't completely moved on. But let's say you figure out, okay, I have this much money that I need to put to work. I want to buy 50 units or unit equivalents like a unit equivalent I call, because like if you're buying an office building, that's not one unit, right? It's like 10
Yeah.
SFR units or whatever, right? So let's say I want to buy 50 unit equivalents a year, but your SFR strategy is only coming up with, you know, 10. So you gotta figure something out for the other 40.
Yeah. Cool. And you guys like were briefly had tried the direct to seller route, but I think you backed away from that. Why was that?
um, yeah, I mean, we still do direct to seller from on different product types, right? So direct to seller on single family is like just a wash with competition. You have to really be like you have to really be tight. Like the operation you run, like you are super tight, like incredibly tight. Like you have like all your KPIs, you have like a crazy marketing spend, like everything is tracked. It's like an operation, like the operations are super well done.
Hmm.
If you don't have the if you're an owner operator, you don't have the wherewithal to build all that infrastructure in. I mean, maybe you do, but that's what it takes right now to succeed in single family residential direct to seller. I mean, candidly, my favorite types of deals are you approach a broker that has a relationship with an owner on an off market property. That is smooth sailing because you're
Mm.
paying that guy. You're not even paying the seller's paying them. You're using their relationship points to get in on the deal, versus like who trusts people that send them random solicitation? No one does.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
people do, but like,
no, it's an
like
uphill battle
versus
though.
yeah,
Yeah.
versus like that other, you get a counterparty involved, and yeah, it could backfire, right? Because those people could then introduce other buyers or whatever. But generally, it's not like that. I love going after expired listings. Like someone had like a property listed 10 years ago with an agent. You just go like, hey, you still know that guy? Is he still looking to sell? Like I found, you know,
Mm.
millions of dollars of upside on deals through that strategy alone.
Yeah. How far are you going back when you're looking at those? Like, is there, you're not hitting stuff that
20
just came off the
years.
market. 20 years,
20
really?
years. Yeah.
You still know
Yes.
that guy?
If it's on MLS, I'm going to go back and do it.
Yeah, that's great.
If
So wait,
there's a
you just pick
record, I'm
up
going
the
to do it.
phone. You just pick up the phone and
Yeah.
call that broker, and you say, "I'm interested in that building." You still have a relationship with that owner, and are they still looking
Correct.
to
And
sell?
correct. And worst thing they're going to do is hang up on you. And most of the times they don't. And best thing they're going to, like, there's two types of good things that come out of it. One, they actually know that owner. And that happens all the time. Or two, now you know this like broker, and now it's another point of like another point of reference. And you'd be surprised, a lot of these resi brokers don't even have a good investor outlet. You think
Hmm.
they do, but they don't. So it's just it's like there's two channels. you're,
Yeah.
you're
So
getting
then,
two deal
yeah,
channels. Yeah.
yeah. So then they bring you future deals because you showed interest
Yeah,
in that one,
one would
even if they
hope.
don't.
One would hope.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to get super sophisticated, like you, I'd put them on like a drip campaign, but I'm not that sophisticated.
So, so you just iMessage them.
Yeah, I message. I keep an Apple Note sheet with their name on
That seems to have
it.
worked out pretty well for you. So
But yeah, I have a full time acquisitions guy, or acquisitions associate. I think is a technical, or acquisitions analyst. I forget what the technical job title is. But yeah, it's kind of what I've taught him to do is this strategy amongst others, and it's been fruitful.
talk about the other strategies you're having him do. I think people love to hear about that stuff.
Yeah, so we got the direct to owner, right? You just mail them, you FedEx them if you want to get super aggressive, and we do that, and you do the handwritten letter and all that. But people are getting wise to that too. You do
What?
the broker
What? Talk,
expired.
talk, talk about that. Talk about the FedEx thing. Why would you FedEx them?
Why? Because who cares? It's $10 or $8 or whatever the hell it is.
No, but why? Like,
And
why does that work?
why? Because who everyone opens up a FedEx. I mean, our tolerance is probably well under 10%, but open sure is 100% or 90% or whatever.
Oh God, you're gonna have to repeat that one. Your connection came through bad that time. That was a little too bad to hear.
Worries.
Why would you FedEx?
Yeah,
Why does it
no
work?
worries. It's just the hit rate is super high. Um, people are like people think it's important. They're gonna open it.
Yeah. And then,
Is that better? Sorry.
yeah. And then why, like, who do you choose to do
Yeah.
that to? Just a property you really want for some reason, or you think they're really going to sell, or what's the criteria to do that?
Mm. Yeah, exactly. I mean, our lead list right now is like 2,000 properties. So like put a gun to my head, charge me $20,000 to get every single person on my lead list to know who we are. I'll sign that check. It cost
Yeah.
me a lot more than $10 to send that marketing piece because you have, the time of diligencing the person and actually putting the piece together. But yeah, it's a good trade.
You write something unique in each one, or no, not really.
Yeah, we tried to. Like, I see you listed this back in 2013. It didn't sell. Blah blah blah. Or we just bought something 2 streets away. Like, you throw us a little customization to it.
Yeah. Gotcha. Um, what others? So you said the direct owner side for you is so it's either direct mail or these FedEx, which is mail, kind of. Is there anything else
Yeah,
on the
so you have
direct
the
owner
direct,
side?
yeah, the standard, right? You have the direct mail. You have the texts. You have the phone calls, the cold calls. That all works. I love the broker stuff, like going through their relationship broker. That's great. Um, that's really it. Those are the big ones. And just looking at on market deals that's mislisted, that's always great too. Like, finding stuff on MLS where like right now the commercial sale section of MLS, Resi MLS is like crickets. Like no one checks it. So I'm sure in 2 years it'll change because nothing is ever good for too long. Um, but yeah, check that or check LoopNet. Like LoopNet deals under like $1 million or $2 million or like the Wild West. Like super easy or limited competition. I mean, the multi stuff is competitive, but some random office building under like for $700,000, like who's gonna want that? Like
Yeah.
who can buy that?
Yeah.
Like no
And
fund
you
is gonna do that.
so you're so is a broker relationship thing pretty much just exclusively looking through MLS or whatever commercial listing service you have at old listings, or is there another way to find those relationships?
I mean, yeah, you could obviously pull some sort of lead list of like every licensed agent in your market and do that. And we thought about doing like an agent partnership program where we go present and do lunches for brokerage offices and stuff. Never really got around to doing that, but if someone wants to do that idea, I'm sure it has legs. You should do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like you want to see cutting edge stuff, like go to New York City. Like the guy, like all the tactics that those guys use, like that's what you got to be doing.
Yeah. But for you, what works is just the simple stuff, not all those things.
Yeah, I mean, none of those are very complex.
Yeah.
But just you keep you keep whatever right 7 or 8 strategies down, so you know them, and then you keep trying and experimenting, and you do a little bit of each day, and will probably be fruitful. Just there's only so many deals in the market, right? There's only so many people that are willing to sell a property at a price that's attractive to you, and
Mhm.
that's kind of what you got to understand is like you can do as many, you can hit every single marketing tactic every single year, and you'll get so many deals a year, and that's the business.
Yeah. How'd you put together those 2,000 buildings? Like, what criteria did you use?
Um, yeah, I think it was list source or whatever the vendor is, but I think that was properties that are zoned multifamily or commercial that have not transacted in 20 years.
So very simple criteria.
Yeah, and why not transacted in 20 years? Or I think the other filter was like there's no debt on them or something like that. I forget because anytime someone's owned something for over 20 years, there's probably some meat on the bone, and that's one thing I really think is a great strategy is buying stuff from quality owners, like people that are just looking looking for, they're not distressed in any way. They're just looking for a change of lifestyle. They don't want to own the thing anymore. Um, I've been fortunate enough to deal with some really amazing sellers, like people like, I had a guy that we bought a building from, an amazing, like crazy return. It was like a store over, sorry, commercial and resi over that. It's like a two unit, and like cap rate is like 16% or 17. It's like super high. And the guy was like, I asked him 6 months later. My property manager asked him like, "What's the story with the air conditioning?" He's like, "Oh, I'll just come over and fix it for you guys." Like, that's someone who sold a property at a smoking good deal 6 months ago and is willing to help fix it for you. Like, really, really good people versus buying from the distressed buyer who's under the gun. They're probably going to hate you at the closing table because you're ripping them off on the house or whatever, and then you can bet everything in that house is done wrong, right? Like, there's like they were in some sort of distress, so they obviously didn't invest in keeping the house up to date. So it is kind of cool when you are able to buy from sellers that are just looking for a change of lifestyle.
Uh, but you still get a competitive return because there's just not that many buyers, or
Correct.
another reason. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
gotcha. How'd you find that deal with that guy?
That was commercial sale on MLS.
Really? Oh, on the wrong, on the, yeah, the section that no one uses. Yeah,
Yes, exactly.
yeah, fishing in the wrong pond.
Exactly.
A pond with no
You can
fish.
fancy you can fancy yourself an arbitrageur. You're like one of those. Uh, unlike the people that actually make serious money in this world, like people that buy yen on this exchange and sell it on that exchange and make millions of dollars a week. In real estate, we'll fish a few deals on the MLS that are mislisted, and we'll make a lot less than that. But hey, it works.
Any other tips to find mislisted deals on the MLS besides just checking the commercial section on the Resi MLS?
You just look for brokers that obviously are like part-time brokers. Those are great. Like, like you're never gonna find something listed by your local power agent. Uh, they're they're gonna they're gonna they're gonna get a market process. What is a market process? You list the property properly, you take good photos, you show it a certain number of times. The market will prevail, and the property is gonna sell at a market price. Versus if you don't take photos of it, you list it with no photos. You make access very difficult because it's tenant occupied, and you're a part time agent because you're working another full time job. Nothing wrong with that, but like you don't have the time, resource to dedicate on the property. Like you're gonna get a deal. Um, and goes back to like what I learned in New York. Like people always ask me like still for rental advice in New York City. I say go look on Street Easy and look for the property with the worst photos. Probably the best deal.
Yep, it's a good piece of advice. Cool, man. Well, we're getting close to the end here. But actually, I have one more question before we jump into our usual at the end is let's talk a little bit about your mindset, right? Because when I remember when, you were investing in Camden, New Jersey, right? And a lot of people thought you were crazy, right? It didn't think it was a good idea. So obviously you thought it was a good idea, but how did you maintain a good mindset with all these people saying the opposite over the years?
Uh, yeah, I just feel like was worried.
You're gonna have to repeat this one too, on God.
All right, so, how are you doing?
Let's hang out for a sec. Your face is starting to clear up.
Right, sorry,
You look like you're on
signal
a
here
Super
and
Nintendo. There we go. We're back.
we're in a random hotel in France, so like yeah, probably not the best Wi-Fi, but yeah, so that's a really good question. As far as mindset goes, yeah, I mean, I can't lie, I was very afraid at many points. But you just go back to like the big picture, like earning 15, 16% cap rates on real estate in a major or in an area adjacent to a major metro, like that's gonna work. It's gonna work. And it's really funny if you think about it. Like when I started in 2015, 2016, we would talk back, and everyone was like, "You're so crazy! Like you're why are you buying in a cash flow market? You should buy in New York City or San Francisco. Like buy in an appreciation market. All the money's in appreciation." And there used to be a phrase like back in 2015, 2016. Everyone was like, "Buy gateway cities." Gateway cities have all this cash flow. Not sorry, no cash flow, but they have all this appreciation. And gateway cities do better in recessions, and they come back. They come back faster, right? This was the whole
Yeah.
thesis people had. All these funds that were cropped up to buy New York and SF and all, and those guys have been crushed because those markets haven't done well in the last 5 years, 6 years, 7 years. There's been almost no appreciation. They've gone down. It's been a terrible event. Meanwhile, Camden has tripled, and you've been earning cash flow the whole way through. Um, uh, so I guess just focus on the big picture. What is the big picture? You're buying something at a 15-16% cap rate in a decent area where it's close to like it's there's a major employment drivers in America, like a great like a country, like a good country where you can borrow money in the single digits. Like I was borrowing back at 5%, 4%, 6% now, whatever. Like you have 10% cushion. Like that's pretty important. And
Yeah.
I'm having to kind of tell myself that now because buying commercial mixed use office now, like, it's same, uh, it's the same doubts that you have. Like, am I crazy buying this stuff? But at the end of the day, if you're buying real estate at a fraction of replacement cost, in a major area, and your yield is like double digits,
Gotcha. Yeah. Anything else that you did on a daily basis or a weekly basis besides just saying, hey, look at these returns? Like this is the right thing in order to keep your mindset right?
um, and I
Hang
feel
on a
we're
few seconds
lagging now again.
before you answer. Your Nintendo, Super Nintendo again. Give yourself 10 seconds.
MacBook Pro, thank you very much. It's
You
the
obviously have the old you obviously have the old MacBook Pro because you're
um, all
give it 10
right.
more seconds, it's coming
Give it
back.
another couple seconds. All right, live. Okay. Are we?
No, you're not good yet. Okay, it's coming back. All right, you're good.
All right. I think we're good now. Sorry about that, guys. Um, but as far as like mindset stuff, I think just writing your goals down is it's super cliche, but like a big, 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 big believer in that. Just like so on my Apple Notes, I'm not kidding. Apple Notes is really, really my CRM and everything. but but I have one called Weekly Goals, one called Work Today, which is like what I need to get done that day, and one is Yearly Goals.
Mm,
And I toggle those three notes like all the time. Like that's super important. As far as my yearly goals, I write them down on Google Drive. Um, well, I'll move them from Apple Notes to Google Drive, and I have a folder for every single year, and I can go back.
huh.
And that's it's like yeah, it's super. And New Year's is my favorite holiday for that reason. Like I think that like it's so important to measure yourself on a year to year basis and see what you've done and what you can accomplish and write it down.
Are you going back on New Year's and looking at the past, call it 5, 7
Yeah.
years? Yeah.
Yes. No. All the time. Actually, I don't even look back that far because it's kind of embarrassing. But 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 yeah, like it's very like you got to write down. Well, what are you doing? Like it's crazy. Like if you don't have it, like what are you gonna do on the? Like I have probably still 20% of the days. Like I'll just be busy or wake up late or something in the morning and not have a chance to write down my goals for that day. And I'll probably get done half of what I would have gotten done if I wrote down what I was supposed to get done that day. Super
Yeah,
powerful.
super powerful. Any other tactics you use besides that?
Um, keep it simple, man. Just keep writing those goals down.
Apple Notes, everyone.
It could be a notebook, but I got too sick of like forgetting where it was and like having your whole like day ruined because you forgot it at home or something. So Apple Notes is good for that. I know there's a bunch of other like tech solutions like Evernote and what have you. But Apple Notes works.
Gotcha. Well, we're getting towards the end here, so there's two questions that I always like to ask at the end of the show. And the first question is, what is the craziest or most uncomfortable situation that you have ever experienced in a real estate deal? We're going to give you 10 seconds before you answer that one too.
um, have sense for thought of this like a couple hours to come up with something more way more interesting, but I'll do something that you guys can easily
We're
pick
gonna
up.
have to
I
wait
had
20
a
seconds
property.
here. Sorry, man. Your
No,
French
it's my
dial up
bad.
is not working well.
But
You're good now.
yes, but this was a terrible, terrible situation. But it was buying a package of properties from a guy in trouble, and right before closing, he rented one of the units to his crackhead buddy for like $750 and just threw me in a lease that I had really no desire to be in. And this was right before COVID, so it took I don't know 2 years or 3 years to get that person out. So that was like a $45,000 swing in the wrong direction. So what do you do with that? I
Did
guess the
you know
lesson
it at
learned
closing
there
or
is
no?
you no, I knew it, and I was like, I had to take it because the other parts of the deal were good enough to where it made sense. But like, long story short, whenever you're tying something in contract, especially multi units, you got to tell a seller like no new leases, or I'm not closing. Granted, you probably will close because the deal's good enough that you'll end up closing, but you got to establish that like verbally, or at least
Yeah,
in writing, ideally.
that's a good 45K lesson. Oh.
Yeah, I think still made money on it, but
Yeah,
but yeah, it sucked.
that sucks. Yeah. Cool. So last one we have here is, if you could go back in time, give yourself one piece of advice when you were looking for that first deal, knowing what you know now, what would you tell yourself?
Another great question. I guess think bigger. Like my first goal was to have 100 properties, so I didn't need like I had a real estate brokerage business, and it was great. I was fortunate, did well with that, but like you're only as good as your last deal, right? So my whole initial inspiration was I wanted to have a residual stream of cash flow through owning rental properties, like the financial freedom thing that everyone talks about, right? And then my idea was, okay, if I own 100 of these and I make $300 a door, that's $30,000 a month, free and clear. That's pretty great. But the thing is, you can't actually make $30,000 a month off these rentals. Like you need to have hundreds of them to have management, so you can actually own these things.
So just think bigger from the beginning in terms of the asset size or in terms of,
Correct. Like realize it's a business.
yeah,
In terms of just realizing it's an operating business, you need to have enough scale to manage these assets, right? Like you could own 100 or 200 units, but if you don't have a management structure in place, like you're not going to make money. So realize that real estate is an operating business. So you can own as much as you want, but you got to have a situation how you're going to manage it.
yeah, that's a good piece of advice. Cool, man. Well, if people want to reach out to you after the show, if they have any questions, or maybe they have a sub $1 million or sub $2 million office building in the New Jersey area that they need to unload, how can they go about reaching out to you?
Sure. My email is ag@cooperacq.com. And yeah, look forward to hearing from everyone.
Cool. All right, man. Thanks for coming on today.
Thanks and apologies for the crappy French dial up.